Located on 1,200 square kilometers of prime land between Edmonton and Elk Island National Park is Strathcona County. A specialized municipality of 98,000 residents today, Strathcona at one time included much of South Edmonton. The county includes 9 hamlets. The largest is Sherwood Park, a population of 68,000, who enjoy small city amenities, economy, and culture. Fur trading, mining, farming, and logging were Strathcona's original industries of significance. Its rural posture changed forever after Alberta's crude oil began to flow in 1947. Perhaps few understand Sherwood Park and Strathcona's gradual rise to prominence than former political dynamo Iris Evans, who met with us at the county library located in the Strathcona County building.
We're on Where You Live, and we're talking County of Strathcona and Sherwood Park this time. And now we're joined by former MLA and longtime Reeve of the county, Iris Evans. Hi, Iris.
Hi there.
Great to see you again.
Oh, it's always delightful to see you and to be here.
How far back do you go to, with respect to your connection to Sherwood Park?
We moved here on the coldest winter day in 1972 and into a brand new house, into a new residential development in Glen Allen, and I'm still there.
Yeah, and always took important part in a lot of the civic structure here, the goings-on, of course.
Well, I got onto the minor hockey executive fairly early because my 3 boys were in hockey. Most political organization, best training ground in the world.
Taught you something, right?
It sure did.
So in all your years as Reeve of the county, and you saw enormous growth here, why did all that happen? Why did Sherwood Park and the county just boom as it has in the last, 35, 40 years?
You know, it might have been because Edmonton said no and Strathcona County said yes. Edmonton said no to the refineries in the late 50s. Strathcona said yes. The province said, if you're going to have the county host the refinery, Imperial Esso, then you have to take residential development. And everybody knew that it comes with a price. So if they were going to get the benefit of the refineries close by and in the borders, then they had to start planning for residential development. And with a pretty tense structure, I think, on council at that time, the county fathers did vote to start a residential development, which was Sherwood Park. We already had some other hamlets, but Campbelltown was really the beginning in a very tight election. A few houses, many that just exist in their same form today, were developed, and the county grew. And the expectation was Sherwood Park would have 20,000 people, and then the growth beyond that would likely occur in the hamlets, in places like Ardrossan, and in any one of the other hamlets.
Started out as a bedroom community, and look at it now, of course,
Well, it started out as a place that, although the county fathers put the stage in place for, it was really the volunteers, the people that said, this is going to be a great place to raise my family, developed the recreation facilities, took pride in the county itself, like all the beautiful landscapes, loved to come out here, and a lot of educators came out here. Not only did we have great recreation facilities, we had an excellent school system in both the Catholic and the public, and we had wonderful programming, like the Cormacs developed the Robin Hood Association for special needs. There were so many opportunities to grow in rather a willing and able environment, and there were the resources to build too, so it was a great place.
And the county, of course, is a well-loved place to live too. I mean, there's so many acreages and subdivisions all throughout the county, lake properties, just a great variety of country living, if you will. Dairy
farms, places to raise your horses, a real feeling of compatibility between each other's development. The acceptance of so much acreage property was a nod to people who wanted to subdivide their properties and saw the potential in lands that were less able to be farmlands to grow other opportunities.
Yeah, what do you love about Sherwood Park in the county so much that you've stayed here all your life?
Do you know, it's a great place to raise a family. I think almost anybody who comes here will say the same thing. It's a place that's small enough to be a community where you meet each other on the street, you know faces in the stores, in the churches, in the recreation facility. And we built things together like Festival Place, kind of a hard-fought battle to get Festival Place up. We had an opportunity to see our students in schools become award winners. Our school systems really flourish. The Department of Education always proud to show off people from other countries, the kinds of program development that was going on out here. And the governance was probably sharper because of the annexations from other communities. Both the fort and Edmonton kind of came off after the county for a bite of this and a bite of that. So we went from this kind of beautiful lazy triangle that was originally the city of Strathcona, before that separated years ago at the beginning of time for the province, to kind of a figure of number one. I always thought bounded by Elk Island Park and this new boundary that included the refineries, it's shaped roughly like kind of a rigid number one. And I thought, yes, that's it. We're number one. And so I love it because of not only the pride people have here, but the values people hold.
We're joined by Roxanne Carr, the mayor of the county of Strathcona. Welcome. What is it about Sherwood Park that just continues to expand? You know, what's the driving force behind all of this?
Well, I think to understand Sherwood Park and Strathcona County, you have to look back in history and see where we came from. And where we came from, if you look at this 1,200 square kilometers that is now Strathcona County, you'll see that this area used to be taken care of by the Cree. They took care of our beaver and our bison, our knob and kettle terrain. And if you were back there at that time, you would see rich agricultural fields, as well as the forests and the lowlands. It would go as far as the eye could see. So we have always had this sense of place, of who we are. And through the decades, from the 1800s on, you see the Europeans starting to come for the fur trade, and then the gold and the coal, and taking us up to 1947, the very first oil well was drilled in Leduc County, and that was a trigger. It was a change for us. You saw Edmonton growing and growing, and by the 1950s, we had some of our leaders saying, we need to take one of our 9 hamlets closest to Edmonton, and we need to welcome the families of the Edmonton workers out here into our county. And from that time, Sherwood Park has grown and grown and grown. In the last 30 years, our population has actually doubled. But it's our sense of place, of the history of us, of the culture, always family focused, always been blessed by great leadership. And you're going to meet one of those leaders later on in your video, Iris Evans.
Yeah, so Sherwood Park, obviously, as you touched on, was started as Campbelltown, which was intended to house refinery workers, after the strike in Leduc number 1. But now 68,000 people in Sherwood Park, 98,000 people in the county of Strathcona. People continue to gravitate out here. It's just a wonderful place to be in general, is it not?
And when I ask people, because I like to meet our new residents and say, why are you here? Why did you choose Strathcona County? They look at me and they say, I love your trails and your walkability of this community. I love your library. I love Millennium Place. You have cultural, like places like Festival Place. And I say to them, it is true. We've got about 300 kilometers of walking and multi-use trails. And go out into the Wilderness Center. Go out to the national and the provincial parks.
Countryside has always been an attraction there. Lake communities once flourished before water levels declined, though some residents remain charmed by those landscapes. Former County Councillor Glenn Lawrence has seen the changes.
Your family goes way, way back in the county of Strathcona, back to 1906. So a lot of changes to the countryside where they settled, I think.
Yes, a lot of changes. Haven't seen them personally on 107 years, but yeah, a lot of changes on the landscape. When they came here, it was basically just nothing.
Yeah.
You know, just bare land, and they had to cut it out from there.
And some forest and a lot of pristine lakes. And I mean, Cooking Lake at that time would have been just totally different than today.
Yeah, all the lakes at that time were at their very highest. The waters all flowed. All the lakes were interconnected. The fishery was probably at its peak. Just a pristine ecosystem from a lake perspective.
Cooking Lake was a fishery at one time, 100 years ago. What changed everything?
Well, I think it was a combination of things. Of course, over the last 150 years, things have been slowly drying out. But with farming practices that came in at the time, water courses were drained and altered. Again, the climate was drying. Just a combination of things that added up to that. I don't want to say it was farming's fault. There was a combination of roads, culverts, redirecting water. Yes. People living on the landscape started to alter that watercourse system. Mm-hmm. And then combined with just a drying climate. So over the years you see that. We know from about 1920 we see a continual loss of water. Yes. In the ecosystem there.
Now the lake communities like North and South Cooking Lake are now so far from the actual water because the lakes have receded so much. Does that affect the desire to live or to build or to stay in those areas?
I think it does. I think because in the early days people liked to live so that they could step out their front door almost to the water line and get into their canoes or their motorboats and go for a spin. Now, of course, like you said, it can be 200 to 300 meters away from the front of these properties. There still seems to be a desire to build. We still see continued building in the areas where you can build around the lakes: Antler Lake, Cooking Lake, North Cooking Lake, Half Moon Lake. There's still Hastings Lake, but and people struggle with it because they want that lake right up to their property line. But it's just not happening right now.
What is happening elsewhere is the county supports New Age economic diversity.
So here we're doing a form of controlled environment farming called indoor vertical aquaponics farming. So basically we are farming fish, and we're using the fish nutrient-rich wastewater, and we're utilizing that to grow the leafy green produce in a vertically stacked format.
Yes, and the produce goes where eventually?
So right now we're actually being carried by a company called Organic Box, and they're a home delivery service. So they service over 2,000 households in Alberta right now. So our beautiful romaine lettuce is showing up to many Albertans and Edmontonians on a weekly basis right now. We're also doing Swiss chard, basil, kale, and we're moving into arugula and spinach over this next couple months. These would be considered urban farms. We are currently located on a farm here in Strathcona County. It's about a 19-acre farm, and really one of the advantages for us in being in a true farm setting is this whole farm is a research facility for us. We've got 3 greenhouses on this property that we're utilizing for comparative research. We have raised beds all throughout this 19 acres out here, and we're just able to run multifaceted research projects alongside of what this is really meant to be, an urban farm that can be built right downtown Edmonton.
If the refineries started Campbelltown, Sherwood Park, what are the benefits today of having this huge petrochemical combination of industries right next door?
It was in 1971 that Imperial Oil consolidated all of its Western Canadian refinery right here. And so we treat our businesses and our industry with the utmost regard. 67% of our revenues come from businesses and industry in Strathcona County. And we looked many, many decades ago at this, and we said there is a natural place to put industry in the north of Strathcona County, and welcomed our neighbors in on this. We changed the zoning. We tried to be consistent in our approach in policy and zoning to industry, to welcome them here, to make them feel that they could come here knowing that we were consistent in policy, knowing it was a safe place. Because where does industry want to put its workers, its families, in a place that has a quality of life?
Sorry, and that's the same for small business too. I mean, you have a boom in small business in Sherwood Park and County of Strathcona.
We do. Right now we have 11,000 businesses, and 220 of those are manufacturing businesses. But it has increased by 38%, the number of businesses in the last 5 years. And why is that? Well, we don't have any business licenses here, as do the adjoining municipalities. We have the lowest non-residential business rate in this region. Why? Because we know we need business.
You're running out of land to grow Sherwood Park. Within 10 years, I understand that'll be it. So in the books is an all-new community called Bremner. It already has a name, but the plans are still in the works. Tell us about Bremner.
Well, Bremner evolved from a few years ago. The Capital Region Board, the province got together, told the Capital Region Board, we need a growth plan for the entire region, not just for Strathcona County, for the entire region. By 2044, the thought was that the population of this area would double. So this entire region has to make way for 2.2 million people. They turned to different municipalities. They put growth nodes on a map. All the municipal leaders got together. There was agreement. So from 2007, we've been working on this. And we had 2 growth areas. And recently we decided on Bremner. We have to put 55,000 people in that area to our reckoning as the population comes.
The plan is for higher density construction for Bremner too, I understand.
Yes, it is. Years ago, 1950s, when Sherwood Park started, it was a different kind of time, a different kind of planning. Who knew that multi-residential, that apartment buildings, that dense living would be in the future? Now we know our planning has changed, our zonings have changed, and we know how to build a more dense area of living. So we're going to do that in Bremner, but we're going to be very respectful of our agriculture area, of the environment around us. And in fact, our theme out there is going to be such that we attract ag research, ag development companies, because that's going to make it unique and different from the rest of our hamlets.
That growth is also reflected in Ardrossan, now home to a large recreation complex along with expanding residential properties.
It puts a fitness and wellness center right in our backyard, and we've got 2 ice surfaces here and a 4-sheet curling rink.
Yes, and that's enhanced the lifestyle here a lot, hey? Tell me how.
It definitely, you can walk down here from your house in the new neighborhoods or over in the older neighborhoods and be right here at the fitness center within 5 minutes.
Leslie, what's the ambience like out here, as a homeowner or resident, on any given day?
It's just like a small community. It's a small community with amenities just 5 minutes away in Sherwood Park, and when the kids were growing up in school here, everybody knew everybody. So it's each other. We all look after each other.
What about the older neighborhoods, infill of some of the older residential neighborhoods in Sherwood Park that date back to the mid-50s?
Yes, and people say, why are you starting a new city, a new hamlet out there of 55,000 people? Why don't you just densify and build up Sherwood Park? Why? Because we really want our families to always have diversity of housing. It's all right to have single homes. It's all right to have low-rise apartment buildings. That's what we've got in Sherwood Park, in this hamlet. And so our mature neighborhoods are very special to us and very important to us. So important that 2 years ago, we struck a public task force made up of people from those mature neighborhoods and said, what do you like about your neighborhoods? What can we do to change them, if you will, or not change them? And that comment came back loud and clear. Not only did they say, we want you to protect the integrity, the character of our mature neighborhoods. We want the same size lots. We do not want lots divided, and we don't want multi-residential housing within those mature neighborhoods. And so they developed some policies on their own, and we're respecting that. Why? Because we know that as human beings, we're all different. Some of us love apartment-style living, some of us don't. We want to have every different form of diversified housing for our residents and to welcome new residents in the future.
I know some folks are going to say, how is Sherwood Park a hamlet with 68,000 people? But that's because the county of Strathcona is a specialized municipality, right? What does that mean?
A specialized municipality, and there's only a handful in Alberta, 5 in fact. It grows up historically in a unique way, and our history is that we never were a county with towns in the middle. It just happened we were a county with 9 hamlets. And in the 1950s, when they decided to grow Sherwood Park, nobody thought at that time to have a city. We were given city status by the province because they saw the uniqueness of our piece of land, our 1,200 square kilometers. And governance after governance, council after council, we have maintained that very special urban-rural balance. You know, when you go through the roads in Strathcona County, as they did with the cycle tour, the Tour of Alberta, just a few years ago, they said, we have never seen rural roads like we have seen in Strathcona County. That's because we take the combined urban-rural taxes and we spread them out so that everybody benefits, whether you live in a rural area, an acreage, or an urban area. That's why that hamlet status and the specialized municipality status has worked for us here in Strathcona County.
The city of Edmonton benefited greatly from the logging industry out here in the Beaver Hills way back in the early times.
Well, you know, there's a very interesting geography and geophysical base here. You know, you think if you had owned any of those refineries, why would you land here? And one of the reasons is that along the North Saskatchewan River, there are deep salt crevices that can contain product and actually has been used to store product, chemical kinds of products that could be brought out. So those issues, along with the coal mining in the early days, were part of the geography, if you will. The lush wood that gave an opportunity for the Edmonton and other areas to build their various structures, their wooden frame places that they developed. Even the proximity of some of the lands that could be used for a variety of other purposes. The use of the water, the agreements that were ultimately developed for water use and so on.
Yeah, you know, with respect to the refineries, and you touched on it again, of course I live out here, and I've often wondered, the proximity to Refinery Row is such that if there were any form of disaster, there'd be a lot of scrambling going on. Are there, and I'm sure there are, major plans that we just don't hear about with respect to this risky location?
Well, you know, I never saw it as risky because I knew full well, and we were visited frequently by the people that were in charge, the CEOs, both of the existing refineries, but also of the major companies. They would come and assure themselves that we were going to do the right thing, that we had the right preparedness with our county fire department, with our disaster management plan. We did rehearsals and exercises of that. Elected officials were taught that they didn't get in there and slug it out, but they maintained a proper policy position. We were trained in Arnprior, actually, to behave properly. Both the elected and appointed officials went down to Ottawa, took coursework, and there was a huge emphasis on developing our firefighters to be both firefighters and paramedics. So there was a real pride in making sure that we didn't encroach on the refineries with the housing, that we allowed the refineries to do what they do best, and that is to manage their properties well. And above that, the province has a biodiversity plan that monitors the emissions, both here and other parts of the province, and always keeps in touch with the local municipalities so we know if there's anything that signals that something should be done. I think properly managed, there's no reason to feel anything but pride in the refineries that actually contribute so much to our community and to our economy.
I think that was proven when the tornado went through here back in, what, 87?
It was a marvelous coordination of both the elected, the appointed, and the industrial officials. And I think that was almost the growth of the idea that we should, instead of being defensive about the industry, we should be proud. And the development of the industrial heartland was in fact based on the fact that we knew we had these facilities, we knew we had something to be proud of.
Yep, no reason to ever worry, right?
Well, you know, you always have, as an appointed and elected official, a cautious concern that, are you doing everything properly? And if you're monitoring and evaluating and keeping in touch with those people, our care plan, the Strathcona Industrial Association, all of these things are built in to make sure that the community knows we're safe.
So great to talk with you again, Iris.
It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk about Strathcona. It's my home and I love it here.